Okay. We were going to focus today on developing a recommendation on one of the issues that we want to cover overall. And from the last meeting, I circled student-focused culture, establish formal structures and educational experiences. Is that what everyone else remembers?
Yes.
Okay. It would be helpful to have Cassandra here, but because she could help guide it. I'm going to let the educational expert here, Dr. Robinson, give us advice on what this should look like. I know you're going through something outside of here.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I'm sorry if it's a lot of noise. I'm outside waiting on my car repair, but and I really did not have a chance to wrap my mind around this. So can you give me some teasers to get my thoughts back in this space of what we were talking about, please?
Okay. Recommendations to committee. I had lunchbox talks model that's in 6 schools, approximately 10 students each. Expand to a hybrid program was one of the structures that we were discussing. And
so I remember that. So somehow in my mind, that's not student voice. Are we talking about student voice or?
Yeah, you're right.
I need more coffee, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not fully here. I have another migraine, so sometimes I don't make any sense. Okay. Establish formal structures and educational experiences. So student-focused culture. Marcus, do you have any ideas about what you would like to see for student-focused culture in establishing structures?
The only thing that I can think of is recognizing excellence, recognizing academic excellence. The example I have is actually in my own son's high school, where during a SAC meeting it was discussed that the faculty admits that they need to do a better job in recognizing academic excellence.
Okay.
And so there are some ideas floating around. I mean, I have a few ideas myself as far as providing these students with an opportunity to have access to information in a way that they may not normally get it. For instance, if they're upperclassmen, such as juniors or seniors, the focus is college.
Okay.
And, so they could have breakout meetings, especially, designed especially for them, to where they can get specific information on how to access the resources necessary to go to college, such as, understanding what they need to complete as far as schoolwork goes. If they're competing, if they're in a upper level class, like if they're working towards an ACE diploma, they need to be on track with that. They need to understand what is required with that. They need to understand what it means to earn an ACE diploma, as opposed to a regular high school diploma. A lot of these young people don't understand that. They don't understand the opportunity that's before them. And quite honestly, they need to feel special. They need to be rewarded for the opportunities that they have. Even going as far as maybe having a dry fit polo shirt saying, hey, listen, I'm an academic achiever in Palm Beach County or whatever school that they need to, whatever school that we're at, that we're talking about. So that there needs to be a level of distinction that's added to our children. And, if I may be so blunt, their performance has a positive impact on the school budget as well.
Right.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's there's a direct correlation there. And so these young people need to be rewarded and recognized for their hard work in the class.
I like that idea. And I've seen something like that, a program. Dreyfus in the visual arts and digital arts has all these meetings once a month with students, and their parents are invited to help, like, with everything they need to get into college. Like, okay, apply for this reward program because it's going to look good on your resume. We'll help you with your portfolio to make it exactly what it needs. Here are the schools in your interest area. Here are their deadlines. Here is what they need. So that would be a good model to transfer over. I think it's a good model. It was really helpful, I thought, for my son. But something like that tailored to these students, because it was phenomenally helpful and very successful for the students. I love that idea. And I don't know about polo shirts because I don't know the school culture. And if I was kind of a high academic achiever in high school, and people teased me for that, and I don't want that to happen to them. But on the other hand, I definitely want to have them recognized. And I'm wondering about, I don't know, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So I think those are some very good ideas. I'm still trying to get my brain oriented as to, like, what meeting am I in, right? So, some of these things were discussed tangentially, at least, in the Superintendent's Advisory Committee for Black Student Excellence, right?
And I missed that.
Yeah, and so what comes to mind when I hear about, like, the model at Dreyfus, which sounds superb, and yes, that should be everywhere, right?
Right.
But in reality, is it going to happen? Like, what are all the impediments to making that happen, right? And so, I think we put it on the almost like the aspirational list, but I think that we also need to be cognizant of the load that guidance counselors are already carrying. And so the question in my mind would be, is this something we should partner with community-based agencies to do? I mean, I don't know. I'm brainstorming, right? I mean, because it should be done, right?
The counselors did not do it at Dreyfus. It was faculty members.
In that art area.
Right. Yeah. And they brought in, because they have non-official faculty that are brought in, which we could replace with community members who have expertise. And also in this case, there may be kids who want to go into science and kids who want to go into law, and it's not as kind of well packaged as everybody wants to go into an art field.
Right.
Still, I like the idea of bring in community.
Well, I'm just brainstorming because the point is made. It should be done, and they should be recognized and applauded for their achievements, right? Now, the other thing is that the Urban League used to have, I can't remember the name. Somebody had the McKnight Achievers. I can't remember if that was the Urban League or if the Urban League's group had a different name. But it was basically a club that you had to apply for, So, and they have a certain GPA. You got a jacket, like that the kids considered to be cool, right? And so, but that was, again, outside of the school district. The problem with that, though, even though it was good, none of my sons wanted to participate because it wasn't cool enough for them, right? Yeah. And then, but the other thing is the only kids who would get there would be kids who had active, engaged parents, right? So again, I'm not trying to throw the model away. I'm just acknowledging the gaps, right?
Could it be offered during the day, like at lunchtime or before school? Because that's easier to get kids to.
Like, put that on the brainstorming list. But and one more thing I need to throw in before I mute myself again is while clearly my goal for the children I gave birth to and now my grandchildren is for them to go to college. Mm-hmm. Young people have taught me that when we talk about college as the only goal, that we are shutting some kids out of the conversation. And one young man I remember told me that when I was talking about being college ready and blah, 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 he said, so what you're telling me is because I don't want to go to college, I'm not valuable. And so I just want to caution that. I know we're talking about kids who have been are already academically successful. That's the subgroup we're talking about, right? In this section, right? Okay. And so I get that. And so I would expect that they would go to college, right? But all I'm saying is our language needs to make sure that we're not boxing out the kids who don't want to go. We're talking about a group who've been successful, so we expect that they would be able to go, right? And be successful there, but yeah.
What about future opportunities?
Whatever. I'm just making the point. I'm just making the point because it kind of hurt my feelings when that young man told me that, because it was not my intention to send a negative message about any child, so.
Yeah. Future opportunities and bring in people from,
trade professions.
Well, yeah.
Military. Just the workforce in general, because there are opportunities for young people to come right out of high school and start a great career. They don't necessarily have to have a certification or anything like that. Mm-hmm. IT comes to mind. They can do apprenticeship style work in IT while they earn their certain certificates that they have to have. There's different opportunities that are out there. But it may start with just asking the young person, what are your aspirations?
Exactly.
And from there, identifying those folks. And with as far as parent engagement, parents are part of this too. And so there's, realistically, in most cases, these young people cannot achieve what they achieve without home base being solid.
Right.
But parental involvement is crucial. It's key. And the parents needed to, in a way, reap the benefits as well, reap the rewards as well, because they were engaged. They challenged their young students to be engaged as students and as representatives of their household and their respective schools. And so they should be as much in on the sharing of information as possible.
Right.
Regardless of what it's really it's really a family. It should be a family style celebration. It shouldn't just, it should feature the young person. It should feature the young student, but it should be a celebration of the entire family.
Oh, I agree. And the one that we had, the parents were involved, but everything was put in writing so that if you couldn't make it on a certain thing, and there were different topics every time, as far as general topics, like doing a resume, etc. I have a question as far as bringing in community volunteers who might be interested. Is it best to have adult mentors, or I'm going to call them mentors, even though that may not be, who are also Black, or does it matter?
It matters.
I thought so.
It matters. Sorry, I forgot. I had my camera off. I really apologize for that. I try not to do that. It definitely matters, particularly when you're speaking about young Black men. I've been blessed to have a Black male influence at every stage of my life. That includes the military, that includes college. Okay. And so I for one, can speak, going all the way back to my father, of course. I can speak to the impact that makes. When you see somebody that looks like you and they're standing across from you and they're at a place that you might want to be, or maybe never consider being, but you possibly could be, That lets the young people know, especially, when we're talking about young Black males, that lets them know that anything is possible. And that's the voter, that's the voter confidence that they need.
Okay.
That's what they need to understand.
That I wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just one example, but you want to make if possible, in an ideal situation, the adult influencers, I'll call them that, mm-hmm. The group should be as diverse as possible.
Okay.
And I'll land my plane there.
So, okay, I'm going to say they need to be Black.
Okay.
Okay, diverse is nice. That's nice. It takes all kinds to make this world go. But I think they need to be Black, and they need to be clear, right? Because, okay, I had to remember that I'm on a public platform here, so let me just get my stuff together here.
I think I knew where you were going, but thank you, Deborah.
I'm backing that up.
I mean, I thought that was the answer, but I wanted to ask it anyway.
But I wanted to say something else, right? So 2 things I need to say. I want to say. One is I want to apologize because I have not been on my job in terms of the work of this committee, right? And I really need to sit down with all the documents that we've gathered so far and put my brain on it so I can figure out what I actually think in a coherent fashion so I can contribute more significantly. But I want to tell a story that has to do with this, if you can see it, you can achieve it kind of mindset. So I grew up, I'm going to try to make this short, but, I had trouble. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, so tremendously blessed, right? So my father was an attorney. My mother was a special ed teacher. I grew up in a community of Black professionals, right? And so I knew every doctor I had, every dentist I had was Black growing up, right? I saw Black lawyers, Black teachers, Black engineers, Black architect, designed our house, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now here's the thing. So when it came time for me to decide what I was going to be when I grow up, right? I had, it was almost like exclusion. So because I was a little bit, my daddy didn't think I could contain myself enough to be a lawyer. So that was crossed off the list, right? And then mama said teachers didn't make enough, cross that off the list, right? Anyway, so I decided I was going to be a nurse. I had been accepted to nursing school and this and that, right? What made me go into medicine was simply because my mother actually was dying of cancer and her doctor taught me to give her pain shots, right? And so, he asked me one day, like, what I was going to be when I grew up. I said, I had been accepted to nursing school. And he said, why are you going to be a nurse? You could be a doctor. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that then. That I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened. It was exactly that point that shifted my career goals, right? But here's the question that I keep asking myself. I saw all these Black professionals all my life, right? And it wasn't gender, right? I had a Black female pediatrician, okay? I mean, so it wasn't gender. What was it why did I not think of that for myself, right? And there's some nugget of wisdom inside of that answer, if I could ever find it, that would apply to the children we're talking about. So because I've seen other young people that needed more than just to see. They needed to be almost like told, you can't do this. Like Dr. Diggs said, why are you going to do that? You could be a doctor, right? Like, it's something in there. I don't know what it is. But let me go back again to the Superintendent's Advisory Committee for Black Student Excellence, because some of this kind of came up. So in addition, so we're talking about students who have been successful. I had to keep reframing it in my brain because I traditionally talk about struggling children, right? And trying to figure out how to make them be successful in whatever way. But what we talked about was the choice programs. And we talked about kids not really knowing all these opportunities out there in our school system for them to get this specialized education in high school. And so while we're thinking about there's our recommendations, and not to throw us off course, because I know I'm doing that, but I don't mean to, is to think, how can we back map it to like 5th grade, right? How do we back map it and say, okay, because there are kids who are doing well in 5th grade who are not being placed in 6th grade advanced math, who are not being placed, in algebra by, 7th or 8th grade, who are not being placed in AP or ACE general papers in 9th grade or whatever, right? So how do we take those kids? Because we're talking about the kids who are already doing well. I have to keep telling myself, how do we get them and make sure that they are on this trajectory inside of our system for success? And then how do we expose them to all the possibilities? All I knew was law, medicine, teaching. That's all I knew, right? And there's 25 million other things out there, right? Whether they plan to go into college or not. IT is, like was mentioned, is just an outstanding example. So, but how do we give them those opportunities? And then the other thing is, if they're not taking these accelerated, for example, Algebra 1 honors by 8th grade, all kinds of courses in high school are closed out to them, right? And so, okay, so I rambled on, but I think we want to do some back mapping. I do, anyway.
I agree. Those are great points.
Yeah, I like that.
Great points. I agree.
Do we want to do it 5th grade plus the higher grades? I think high school, getting them ready for whatever their careers is great. And I know for my clients, I want the parents to start thinking about the future much earlier than they have DVR, which Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, which provides services to prepare them. Because you need to be doing those things and getting them ready with the right coursework, the right other opportunities. So I know we might have barriers, but I would suggest doing it at the, earlier levels, like at each level, maybe to prepare them, and not just do elementary. And I think we could do it with a lot of volunteer power. If we get different parents in, at Binks Forest, we created a science program where different adults in STEM would come in, and it was part of the wheel, would come in and like do an experiment or do an activity with the students. And that way we got members of the community in who could also talk about their careers and expose them. But right now, I don't think if we added it to a wheel or tried to create it as related to a course, we would get slapped down by the state. I believe. I could be wrong. Oh, the wheel. The wheel was electives. So it wasn't electives in that every child had to be on the wheel, but one thing was gym. And at Binks, they had an IT section. They had arts. Like, I think they had regular art. They had music. Anyway, it was like 7 things. And, one was reading. Stop, drop, and read. But we added one that was science-oriented and STEM-oriented, but we brought in members of the community as volunteers to every one of those classes, and it wasn't like one person did it all, and we tried to get it varied. So what I'm saying is we relied on volunteer people who are volunteers, and I'm wondering if we could create a core of volunteers at each school and start it as a pilot program. I imagine it would be really hard to set it up across the board, but see how the pilot program goes and go to the schools that would have the biggest need for it. And that's throwing it out. It could be totally off every little point, but.
No, I like it. In fact, so I think, when you said wheel, what triggered for me is when, way back in the olden days, when my oldest son was in middle school, they had a vocational wheel, right? So they had one elective that rotated through the different, I I think they were really related to construction trades. I don't know. But anyway, and so at least they had some exposure to the possibilities of these things that you might not hear about. But so, I mean, I think what you're talking about maybe could be done as part of an after-school club or after-school program. I don't know, but I mean, I agree that the exposure and the use of volunteers, but somebody would have to own it and be responsible for all that scheduling. But back to the back mapping piece. So we had the AMP, right? And so I would have to look at the student progression plan to refresh myself on what the criteria is for AMP. So, but I'm willing to bet good money that there are, we're talking about Black children, that there are Black children out there who meet the criteria for AMP who are not being placed at AMP, right? And
what is AMP?
Accelerated Math Program.
Okay, thank you.
And so I think that's what the acronym stands for. So and then just every step of the way. So, and I don't know how far we want to go into this as a subcommittee, because I think I'm taking us off track. So we were talking about how to support the students who are already successful, right? Okay, so I'm on track with that because I keep trying to take underperforming students and make them successful. But in this case, I'm saying let's look at the students who are already being successful by the traditional measures and see if the system is supporting them in acceleration, right? In term, so who's out there that's qualified for AMP that's not being placed at AMP? Who's out there who could easily be placed in 6th grade advanced math? Who's out there why aren't they more Black kids being placed in ACE general papers or AP or whatever? I mean, we just have to decide where to look, but I'm saying, I'm trying to keep myself focused. We're talking about kids who already meet the measure that the system says they need to meet in order to be placed in these classes of acceleration. Why isn't the system doing that? And then the next thing is, and then back to the support piece, right? So, and this goes back to, what's the gentleman's name who's on the call? Mr. what?
Marcus, I know your first name.
Brown.
Okay.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown. Okay, Mr. Brown. So this goes back to the point Mr. Brown made in terms of acknowledging and supporting them, because those places, we have a lot of culture issues, right? So children go into these advanced classes and they receive the message explicitly or implicitly that they don't belong there. And so they don't feel supported, and then they kind of feel like they're getting pushed out. And so then how do we turn around and provide, maybe it's an expansion of the lunchbox conversations, maybe it's a club, but so that they can have a space where they feel supported and heard, and they can share their frustrations, right? So we have, like, for example, the Black Student Unions, which is one space, but I'm talking about specific space for the students who, by definition, and I'm not saying kids in Black Student Unions are not successful. I'm saying a space is designated for successful Black students, right? And so so again, I guess I'm old because I tell stories, but I'm going to tell you one more. So years ago, this was a long time ago, this was more than 20 years ago, there was a fellow who was a high-ranking person in the school district who had run an IB program in rural South Carolina, right? And he said all the students were Black and all the students were poor, right? And many of them had not been traditionally successful in a way that, we would require to be an IB, right? And so But he said what made them successful was that they created basically this club, right? And so the kids were in IB, they would meet after school. Of course, they had the academic support / tutoring sessions, but they also had social support sessions, right? So that he would like meet with them, have lunch with them in a special, part of the school once a week and talk about it, chop it up and see what was going on, right? And he also talked about them doing weekend trips together, right? But I'm just saying that while we're talking about this, the young people that Dr. Cassandra spoke about had, it seems like all of them had supportive home lives. And I get that that's the magic, right? But there are children out there who don't have these idealized home lives that are still managing to be pretty successful or very successful. Every now and then you get the one who's just outstanding, supremely successful despite these obstacles, right? But the question is, how do we create a cocoon around them inside this system that will tend to dampen their voice and minimize their opinion and send them messages that they can't do it? I mean, I could tell you my son was told explicitly by his teacher in the IB program at Subcommittee that he didn't belong there, which is what made him stay, right? I mean, but, I'm just saying we have to acknowledge that the system is part of the problem in multiple ways, and some of it's culture.
Absolutely. Maybe building into these clubs, either suppose they meet once a week, one session per month, or a section of each meeting would be that discussing the support they need and their frustrations. And there maybe, not to make it all negative, what worked for them.
Well, I think that to that point, we can start by having the discussion with the young people that I forget the name of the doctor that basically provided the presentation for this committee to be formed. If that's, I think that would be a great place for us to start and to continue those conversations on a broader scale. And as we get into the process of implementing the support system, there must be times and words of affirmation from everybody that's involved. I like what was shared about the cocoon. I know there was a negative vibe. We can turn it into a positive vibe. It's like just they earned the opportunity to make the best of themselves. They have the opportunity already. The school system provides them that on paper. But if they actually take hold of the opportunity and they maximize the opportunity, they should never be told that they can't do anything. They should always have people to not just encourage them but also challenge them, also push them to have to reach the level of greatness that they want to reach. You're muted.
Maybe call it something that's positive or encouraging. Just the name of it, like you can do, like maybe using the initials, but something that says you can do it. Maybe not those words. Maybe call it that.
Right. That could be it. But definitely something, and also something to in the same spirit. The students, the young people have to be engaged as well, because we are, among other things, preparing them for adulthood.
Right.
And so they have to understand the realities and the challenges that we face as well. We just learn how to overcome those things. It doesn't And what it should do is it should challenge every other student in the school that hasn't quite attained that level of excellence to get. And it's, it can be there's a couple of other ideas I have on my mind that's further down the road, but I'm going to share those just yet.
Oh yeah,
we're not there.
Hopefully, we'll do a bunch of different things. I remember that Ms. Simmons had suggested that we develop something that's a recommendation without, and we could even say, here's an example, but we shouldn't get too much into the specifics or they may not accept it. And I can't see who's in the room right now.
It's just me and Susan in the room.
Okay. Anyway, I think we're on the right track, in my opinion. There are different elements of it, like doing the research is one thing, finding out some of the barriers that are happening and the ones who are getting into these classes, how they're getting supported. And I do agree. I know when my son was in middle school and they were making the math determination, the math teacher determined, and I know she tried to exclude Chris, and I had to fight for him to get the take the test, because I guess they had a test back then to get in. But if the teacher made a determination, I don't think this person will be successful, they aren't given the opportunity to take the test. And I think the teachers may even have input after the test as to whether they think. So if you have a racist teacher or a teacher that doesn't see the potential in someone, you're already blocked out. So
I'm sorry, what test are you talking about, Kimberly?
The test to get into the math, to get into
AMP?
It was Orleans Hannah. No, she's talking about back in the day, right? How old is your child?
He's 26 now. I don't know how it works. That's what I said back then.
Oh, so now with AMP, it's kind of determined by what your scores are, particularly on state assessment. Okay. And that's kind of how they try to recruit students. For example, my kid was recruited, but I didn't allow her to go into AMP. And then once they recruit your child, then they test them. So that kind of eliminates the as you the racist teacher, because it's dependent on what your child how the child scores on the state assessment as to whether or not they're really provided the opportunity. And then some children that teachers might see potential in that might not have scored as well, or they might have not have taken the state assessment because they've come from out of state or or out of country. Then those students are also tested to go into the AMP program. That kind of eliminates that kind of gives them the opportunity also. But AMP is a very strenuous. It's a lot for those kids. So if they're not, you can be academically ready and not socially or mature enough for and then parents cannot be ready also, because even though Nina Simone was not in AMP, she was in the class where the AMP kids were, and the parents would call me because they would be so stressed out, and I would be like, "Girl, why you put your kid in that if you weren't ready?" So, I wasn't ready. So, So, Dr. Robinson, don't say anything because I know you're gonna be like, "I can't believe you didn't let your baby." So, yeah. So, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, no, my son dropped out.
So, before I see y'all trying to trigger me to run down some more side roads here, but I'm going to try to stay focused. So I started trying to figure out where we land with this. So this is what I think I'm hearing, or maybe this is what I'm saying to myself. So y'all can clean it up. So one is that the recommendation would be to have, we need to have a descriptor for the lunchbox conversations. Is that what they're called? Lunchbox something?
I think someone used that language because it was in my notes from last time.
Yeah, that's what
the program is called.
Yeah, that's
the Lunchbox Talks
program.
or something like that. Lunchbox Talks.
Yeah, Lunchbox Talks. So I think that what we're saying is a need for Black students to have more opportunities to share their concerns. Now, those lunchbox talks are not just for successful students, though.
Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to walk this through. So
we need a separate one.
No, well, so wait, we said before, I think, that we were supportive of these lunchbox talks, but we wanted to do a hybrid expansion.
Right. Okay. Well, I meant...
No, I know what you mean. So the next thing on my little list is to have what I'm calling achievers clubs.
Okay.
Right? And so that's the space for kids who are already successful, or, and I don't know if we want to say striving for success, right? Because I don't want to, I don't want to create something that says you got to have a 3.5 GPA to be in this club, right? If you have a 3.0, but you're saying, yeah, I'm going to work harder, I got it, I click, I see what you're saying, then I would hope that we would welcome into that space. So however it's defined, an achievers club. And then now what I put in the chat with my little brain flash here is each one teach one. So I want to just go back to this thing. So, there's this a belief system, and Kimberly, you kind of shared, I think, that this was your experience, that children, quote, other children can pick on or harass academically successful students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and I'm not saying that that's not true. I certainly not trying to deny your reality, but what my experience is so I started having some of that in junior high, and I was in a roughneck school, right? Like, we didn't have guns on campus, but we had lots of knives and those knuckle things and the nunchucks and all that stuff. It was too much violence. And so, yeah, I was threatened, but it became clear to me that there was a higher risk of having trouble if my grades dropped. There was a higher risk of having trouble at home. That became clear, right?
Yeah.
So what I started doing was tutoring the same kids who were threatening me, who wanted me to show them the test while we were taking the test and stuff like that. Okay. So what I've heard, and this is consistent with my experience and the experiences of some others, is that it's not that people are really criticizing you. It might be like jealousy, right? And because they have not had that success, and we might be coming across like we think that we're better than them, right? Because I'm telling you, after I started teaching, and I was teaching the roughneck kids, right? And once I had no problems. I was cool with everybody, right? Including at home. Home life was peaceful because, anyway, so my point is, I would like to have a little asterisk on this Achievers Club, that part of it is each one teach one, an expectation that these young people who are being successful, that there's an expectation that they help others be successful, right? Others who are not as successful as they are, right? Because I do believe in the live while you climb philosophy. I was raised with it, right? I don't think that any of us are successful if all of us are not successful, and I want to instill that. And I also think it might help overcome some of this, the quote smart kids being challenged, and will help other kids believe in themselves and see the pathways to success better. Okay, so that's that. And then the third thing I had was this concept of looking at the data and working the system to accelerate the young people who are already meeting the criteria to be accelerated, but somehow magically are not being accelerated, right? Now, if, to Ms. Simmons' point, the parents don't want them accelerated or the parents aren't ready, I mean, I get that. I think that's a counseling conversation. I'm telling you, sixth grade is hard. I'm having a hard time in sixth grade. Here, I'm just, this is ridiculous, right? But, so I get the struggle, right? And I get that, like, I've got all this formal education. I'm retired. I have time. Like, oh my goodness. I don't know how any parent who's working, especially if you got to work too much, can manage to support the children the way that they need support. It's just hard. So that comes to like a whole nother set of issues. But anyway, so those are my three, what I think I hear us saying. And so y'all could clean that up in case I'm mishearing.
And the math is different, right? So it's the same math, but all of a sudden the math we used to do that came out with the same answer is not good enough anymore. So the math is
That's
different.
That's because y'all not math people.
No. I'm just saying that the way that, no. It's new math, right? So the way that they teach the kids is different on how to do the math problem, right?
I understand that. I'm doing it. That's
what I'm saying.
For years.
Right.
But listen, all I'm telling you is you must be a language arts kind of person.
I definitely am. I can write you
and that's why you're saying that.
Right.
So math people, like, while we will acknowledge that it's being taught differently, what they're doing is they're trying to teach these math concepts. Listen, I'm talking to my third grade granddaughter this morning about the, the commutative property of multiplication. All right. So I'm like, what are all those words you're using? It means 3 times 5 is the same as 5 times 3. But what she's saying is, if you have 3 rows of 5 apples, that's the same as having 5 rows of 3 apples. I got to take a minute and understand that we're saying the same thing, because they're teaching the concept instead of just the math, right? And which at the end of the day is going to be better if you're going to go into any STEM stuff. It's just like I think all that English language art stuff seems so foreign to me. I don't understand all that. Like, y'all have I before E except after C, but that doesn't apply in the word there, THEIR, okay? Like, I'm just saying, right? So, each of us has our thing, right? So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but, like, don't squash it. Okay. Let's teach.
We need a component for parents.
Yes.
Okay. And then part of that is giving them the information that the kids are getting for, because we don't want to drop out of our idea, is exposing them to opportunities and then telling them what they need for them.
Right. That's good.
And then getting that information to the parents. I'm sorry, I'm writing this down.
But you know what else we need? This is like an old question that I haven't been able to answer. What is the language that we use to get parents and young people to understand how important this education thing is? Like, what's the word? So if I've worked, I'm just telling you. So I get how important it is, but it was still hard, after like working all day or being on call and all that stuff, to make sure that my children had their homework done and to look in their book bag and all that. Like, it's still hard. So for somebody who is not as blessed as I've been, Like, what's the language that gives them that additional boost of energy to say, okay, I'm going to do this tonight because it's important for my baby to be successful in school because of XYZ. We don't have that language, or I haven't heard it yet, right? Like, we talk about how much money you can make if you're a high school grad versus a high school dropout, or a college grad versus high school grad. But what's the thing? What's the mantra that you're going to say to yourself every day to overcome your fatigue and your frustration? And then, of course, when they get to be preteens and teenagers and they start with that foolishness, I'm just saying. That's where I am right now. It's like, okay.
With my son, it was like death match. If I tried to encourage him or help him, it had to be someone else. It had to be outside, despite how much I believed in it and how I was exhausted. I was a single mom trying to have the energy and time to do that. It was, if I tried to do it, and I think I'm not the only person that faces that. So helping the parents or helping create other people when there's a situation like that, possibly. I mean, my son went to the point where he would not bring home essays or admit he had essays because I was a professional writer, and I would circle everything. And all the way through high school, he would not tell me if he had essays because I didn't do it for him, but I would circle, okay, go back and look at this. Now he thanks me because he's a good writer, but
yeah.
So like there are going to be situations like that. And to go back to what you were saying, what I was thinking is their hesitance to the Black student achievers' hesitance to stand out in a culture of school where like the football players are admired, but not necessarily the debate and chess players, overcoming that. And hopefully, based on what you were saying, we can definitely do that, especially with giving them the opportunity to help the others. Okay, what else do we need to put into this? And what time is it? Okay, we have time. Half an hour.
So I think the parent component is good, and since like we all know, and Mr. Brown has said, like, is the importance of the family support.
Yeah.
But then what's that messaging, and then how do we support them in those efforts? Like I think that's the magic. That's the $25 billion question. If we could figure that out. And it's crazy, and especially, I don't know, it's crazy, and all this technology. I had to schedule a meeting with my grandson's teacher for her to explain how she's using Google Classroom, because she's got all this stuff in Google Classroom, and it's really neat. But I'm having trouble following. Okay, what's due tomorrow? Right? But he understood it, but I didn't, and therefore he was running game on me, explaining, telling me that the home laptop didn't sync with the school laptop, and that's why it looked like it wasn't done. I was like, yeah, I think that's not true, but I need to check, but.
Well, for ESC students, and there's probably at least one in every class, they have to send that information home, especially with kids that pull that kind of thing. And if they're already doing it, couldn't they just make copies of it or cut and paste the same email to, honestly, everyone else? But,
that doesn't mean I was going to understand it. See, I'm saying, because I have a little technologic phobia, just a little bit, right? And so what about the parents who didn't have to work with a computer for their job all the time? I'm just saying, so we just, like, if we can figure out, can we please include messaging for Black parents specifically, but it'll benefit everybody, but messaging for Black parents specifically about why we need to struggle now, so to speak,
Can we make those meetings hybrid, or are there that many people or are we excluding people who don't even have access?
Which meetings are we talking about?
The parent meetings, or even the entire meetings. I guess if they're during the day, it's not going to work. But if we have a parent component, can we make it hybrid, since not every parent can make it there? But I know in other groups that you and I belong to, that making it hybrid allows people who are working to use their lunch or whatever.
No, the parent meetings have to be at night. By definition, if it's during the day, you're trying to exclude people, in my opinion, right?
I agree.
But what I'm focused on,
hybrid is my question.
That's fine. I think that's fabulous. But my point is, the school district has all these communications people, right? All these people. What is the message? What's the mantra that me as a parent, I'm going to say to myself, that's going to make me overcome my fatigue from this day and check that book bag? What is the message about why this is so important that I do these things each day? And they look actually relatively small things in our opinion, but at the end of a hard day, when you know, been going through it at work and all that, it might feel like the straw that's going to break the camel's back. But what is the mantra that's going to get me to do that, to take that extra effort for my baby? What is it how are we going to explain to parents and young people why this is important? Somebody has to find that messaging. And then we could talk about the parent groups and everything. But what I'm talking about right now is just this piece of messaging. The parent groups, I think that's fabulous. That's fine. That's good. But what's the message? Because what traditionally happens is when you have these parent things, it's for the people who are already engaged. The people who already understand that I have to do this one more thing. Like, you know what I mean?
What about parents are the key to success, or?
No, that's not it. It's got to be something really much more almost personal. But you know what? Again, okay, I'm sorry. I got to stay focused on the kids who are already successful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm talking about, I morphed into the kids who don't have engaged parents, which statistically are less likely to be successful. So I'm sorry. I'm going to go there every time, so y'all have to check me.
We can address, well, once we get the supports in place for these kids, one of the factors from the research that Dr. Corbin Thaddeus came up with was that in almost every case of the achieving students, the parents were involved. But giving them opportunities to learn what their kids are learning about, if you're interested in college, here's what you need. If you're interested in trade school, here is what you need. You need to be in apprenticeship opportunities. Are there things in high school that could prepare you? And then there are specific high schools geared toward that kind of thing.
Right. So that could be part of, the Achievers Club that we talked about could have the parents of Achievers Club and do that, right?
Right.
Okay. So, but I just need to finish spinning out in my stuff about the messaging. So can we request that somebody, however it's done, that we ask parents of successful students, what makes you get up and go that extra step, that extra foot, that extra mile to support your child? What makes you do it? What's the message in your head? Because maybe they have it, and we just need to pull it out of them, you know?
Yeah.
And then share that with others. So I try to stay focused on the successful students.
Right. And we should phrase it as family members, because there are probably grandparents and aunts and uncles who can fill in when the parents aren't available to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
or you could actually say caring adult. I mean, if you want to go the extra step, I mean,
Yeah.
So, Mr. Brown, we planning the whole entire universe here, so you better weigh in.
Yeah.
Apologies, ladies. I thank you for all of the feedback. I do appreciate everything that I'm hearing. I think that overall, we want to create a culture of success. Overall, we want to create a culture of excellence. And as was eloquently pointed out, and very candidly pointed out, there are some significant flaws in our system we need to overcome. Because this isn't just about, well, right now, in my mind, it is about, students that are disadvantaged, Black students in particular. But this carries over into everyone. This carries over into every stuff. And it's amazing to see that there are certain periods in time in which the one group really addresses or has issues addressed, it exposes everybody. Different periods of time. Think about, the 44th president of the United States. The fact that the Black man taking an oath to the highest office of the man exposed a whole bunch of stuff. So this journey is going to be a challenge for everybody to look at themselves, find out, what's wrong, why are we doing this, what am I accepting, what am I complicit to, what do I approve through my silence, and how can I change it? So I definitely enjoy it. If this could be transcribed and sent to me in some way, shape, or fashion, I'd appreciate it. That's it. I'll lay my point there.
I can't hear you, Kimberly.
Yeah, I didn't. There was a lot of static, so I was trying to follow that, but I know I missed part of it. Dr. Robinson, did you hear all of it?
I did not.
Okay. I know this might be annoying, but can you put the main points in chat just so I make sure I understood everything, and then I can put them in the notes?
Okay, so Kimberly, you want to summarize what recommendations we have so far, and then I I hate to ask it this way. Then are we done, or do we have some more? Because again, I have not done my job in terms of reviewing all the notes recently.
I think this is the most specific, action-oriented of everything we've discussed. And remember all those stickies, there are other things we can do, but if we focus on this one and getting it right, I think we'll be able to address the other ones over time. All right, so create students, what do we want to call it? Student Success Club?
I was calling them Achievers Clubs really because to me that name says they're already achieving.
Right. Okay, I like that. Okay, create Achievers Club. Within the Achievers Club, they get the opportunity to talk to each other and, whoever's leading it, about frustrations, what's working, just supporting each other.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'm not. Okay. Then another component is the exposing them. Well, for second, I think we ask them what their goals are, or do we expose them first and then ask them what their goals are?
Well, personally, I think that what we would want to do is to push the school system to expose more children to opportunities, right? Like to have them use an interest inventory, and then maybe that's also part of some kind of parenting conversation. And I'm talking now, like at least by middle school, right? So the ones that are already achieving, I think maybe that's done through the Achievers Club. I don't know, but yeah, but I don't want to just work to expose those who are already successful on possible career pathways and the opportunities in the school district. I want the system to do a better job of exposing all children. But in the context of those who are already successful, maybe that's a bullet point under the Achievers Club.
Okay. I mean, I know in elementary school, almost every school has career day or something, and then take your child to work day. But like you were considering a career until someone said you could be a doctor. And that's why you weren't thinking of that. So we could do career inventories are usually geared toward high school students, and we want to reach out to kids younger. So we have to look for tools at different ages.
Yeah, I think that in the Black Excellence meeting, I could have misheard, but I think that she named a interest inventory that was for middle school.
Okay, that's good.
And it was online.
Okay. And then, so that would expose them to things, bigger opportunities maybe within an area of interest or a variety.
Well, then it would have to go the next step. That somebody would need to say, oh, your interest inventory looks like you would be interested in X, Y, and Z. Did you know school district has this program and that program and the other? But just the interest inventory is really to see what their interest is, and also to say, here's some possibilities that line up with what looks like you would be interested in that you may not have thought about. You maybe didn't know it existed.
So we need to have an adult have a conversation with them reviewing the results.
Right. And again, for this conversation, since we're talking about students that are already successful, that could be done in the Achievers Club.
Right.
Right? That's doing it on a broader level is more difficult, but yeah.
Well, that's part of like the Create Achievers Club. Give them an opportunity to talk about frustrations, what's working, and support each other. Then we push the school system to expose them to opportunities. For example, a the career interest inventory, and then have an adult have a conversation with them, reviewing that and asking for their input or thoughts. Then 3 is to have these meetings available, meetings to provide them with information on what they need or how to reach this future opportunity. I mean, these things that we used to have, it had deadlines and, you know, every little detail that you could want. Here's how to contact this school or whatever. Meetings to provide them with what they need to access that opportunity. And then I still think there's mentorship or exposure to people in those careers. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want us to think that is something magic about somebody in that career, and you suddenly go, oh yeah, that's a, you know, it's got to be more almost explicit than that. But I mean, that's fine. But I mean, that's just that's part of the Achievers Club, right?
Right.
Okay. And then we're going to have the parents of the Achievers component, right?
Right.
And then are you including the lunchbox talks and the hybrid expansion of the lunchbox talks, or
would the lunchbox talks be part of the opportunity to talk about their frustrations? The school system is kind of outside, but we want to have the conversations with adults about the career inventories. Is that going to be private, or would that be part of the club, the Lunchbox Talks Club?
No, I think that, okay, again, this is how I'm hearing it and thinking about it, that the Lunchbox Talks is a less structured activity, right?
Okay.
And that it's just a time and safe space for kids to have whatever conversations with their friends and a trusted adult about the things that are going on, and then they could kind of guide them. And so, but the Lunchbox Talks is for any student, not just successful students. So that's a clear difference between that and the Achievers Clubs.
Okay. But the opportunity to talk about their frustrations and what's working, I see that as, it might not be called lunchbox talks. Maybe we call it something else, but it could occur at lunchtime for that specific group because they have their own concerns and
which group? The successful kids?
Right.
Yeah, that's part of the Achievers Clubs.
Right. What I'm saying is Lunchbox Talks would be separate then because it's not. Okay. Got it.
And Lunchbox Talks are for any kid. But what we're saying, the Achievers Club specifically for the kids who are already successful, or my word, striving to be successful, right?
Right. Well, you had mentioned where does that fit? And so that's why I was trying to figure out. Okay, then we're going to call it.
Lunchbox Talks came under student voice.
Okay. But that's not part of what we're recommending because that's already happening, right?
Well, I don't know. You guys talked about it last time, and you talked about expanding it. And then I talked about doing it in a hybrid fashion where it would also be that Connect to Greatness could work with Black males at other schools to support them in how to have successful lunchbox talks. I mean, you can set it aside. I mean,
Well, so do the high achieving Black males lead the lunchbox talks?
No.
Okay.
Black male adults lead the lunchbox talks.
Okay.
Agreed.
I haven't been exposed to it, so I have to ask these questions.
No, I haven't either. I just heard the presentation.
Right. So we're going to give, under what we're proposing, at lunchtime, an opportunity to talk about frustrations amongst high achieving.
No, you're still mixing them up.
Okay.
Okay. The Achievers Club can be any time of day.
Okay.
Okay. The Lunchbox Talks almost seem, in my little mind, is almost like a trademarked name of the effort that Connect to Greatness is doing, where they're going into schools, and 6 schools, and working with students. They're meeting at lunchtime, and they're creating a safe space for the young people to talk about what's going on with them and providing them with support, mentorship, and guidance, right?
Right.
That's separate.
We were talking about some of the kids may not be able to, for family circumstances, do it at other times, which is why, is Lunchbox Talks every day?
I don't think so. I think it's once a week.
So I'm wondering if we have a separate day, although, as you said, this could happen anytime. But what we're suggesting for the Achievers Club is have them the opportunity to talk amongst themselves about being a high achiever and what they need and what is helping them. So that's part of what we're proposing. And then pushing the school system to expose them to opportunities, career interest inventory, and getting them into the advanced classes. Then meetings to provide them with what they need to access that opportunity, which could be with role model adults that not only include the nuts and bolts of you need to apply by here, or you need this internship, or you need these classes, but also have the role model kind of give personal anecdotes and insights. Does that make sense or no?
That's fine. I don't know if you need to say all that. And it's 9:59.
Okay. And then mentorship or exposure to career opportunities and parents of achievers, a program for. Am I covering everything or not?
Yeah, and the whole acceleration issue.
Right. I put that under push school system to expose them to opportunities. One is career.
That's different. Acceleration is, just think of it, the kids who qualify for AMP are not getting in AMP. Is that true?
Well, yes, that's within the school.
It is, but it's not opportunities. I just want to be clear about that. Okay, I need to log off and get my car, and I'll come on to the main meeting on the phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should we give these points in the report or not so much?
I think you give a 10,000 foot, whatever they say, 30,000 foot view.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Did I include everything? Marcus, I hope you don't mind my using your first name. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Kim, are we able to, we need to exit out of here, okay?
Yeah.